Keanu Reeves notices a homeless mother with baby living in a car, and what he does will shock you. Imagine this. You're driving through a quiet street, minding your own business, when something catches your eye. A weathered car parked on the side, not much different from any other, except for the figure inside. A woman, tired and worn, cradling her baby in the front seat. But here's the thing, this isn't just any woman. She's a mother in need, struggling to make it through the toughest time of her life, with no roof over her head and nowhere to turn. Her world is slowly slipping through her fingers, and as we watch from the outside, we feel a strange pull in our hearts, urging us to step in, to do something. What if I told you that this mother's story was about to take a dramatic turn, and the person who would change everything for her wasn't some anonymous stranger, but a Hollywood legend, Keanu Reeves? Yes, you heard that right. Keanu Reeves, the actor we've all come to know for his down-to-earth demeanor and unexpected acts of kindness, was about to make a decision that would not only change the life of a homeless mother, but also remind us all of the power of compassion and humanity in a world that can sometimes feel so cold and indifferent. It all started on one ordinary day when Keanu, known for his quiet nature and genuine humility, was driving through a neighborhood just like any other. He had no idea that what he was about to witness would pull him into the story of a woman and her child, both struggling in ways most of us will never understand. But fate had other plans. As Keanu's car slowed down near a rundown street corner, something caught his attention. He noticed the car parked in a spot that seemed out of place, a little too far from the bustle of the world around it. He saw the woman sitting in the driver's seat, her eyes staring blankly ahead, as if lost in thought, almost as if the weight of the world was on her shoulders. And next to her, a small baby, resting in a car seat, unaware of the hardships their mother was facing. Now Keanu, known for his simple yet profound understanding of life, could have easily driven past. He could have ignored the scene, thinking, I've got a busy day ahead, or it's not my problem. But that's not what Keanu does. He is not the type to turn a blind eye. Something about this woman's struggle, something about the way her face reflected years of hardship, called out to him. What happens next will not only leave you in awe of Keanu's heart, but will also leave you questioning how often we overlook the people right in front of us. Keanu didn't just stop and offer a few kind words. He didn't just give her a few dollars and drive away. No, what Keanu Reeves did next will absolutely shock you, and trust me, it's a story that will restore your faith in the goodness of humanity. But before I tell you exactly what happened, let's take a closer look at the mother, the child, and the situation they were in. Life had been anything but kind to this woman. She hadn't always lived in her car. At one point, she had a home, a job, and dreams for a better future. But sometimes life hits you in ways you never expect. A sudden job loss, an unexpected health issue, and before you know it, you're left with nothing, living in a car, struggling to find your next meal, just hoping the next day might be better than the last. For this mother, every day had been a fight for survival. She had no family to turn to, no one to lean on. The streets were unforgiving, and her child, though too young to understand the full extent of their struggle, could feel the tension and fear that hung in the air. As Keanu took in the scene, he knew one thing for sure. He couldn't walk away. The moment felt like something bigger than just a random encounter. He had to do something. What happened next would forever change the trajectory of this woman's life and give her hope when she thought there was none left to hold on to. But here's where the story takes a turn. What Keanu did was beyond anything anyone could have expected. It wasn't just a donation, a pat on the back, or a promise of help that may never come. What he did was an act of kindness that transcended the typical celebrity charity. It showed how, in a world that often feels divided, There are still people out there who choose to connect with others, to truly see them, and to offer the most important thing anyone can give: hope. Now, as we pause for a moment to let that sink in, I know what you're thinking. What did he do? What could have been so surprising, so impactful, that it would change everything for this woman and her child? Well, I'm not going to spoil the surprise just yet. What I will say is this: Keena's decision serves as a powerful reminder that kindness doesn't always have to be grandiose or public. Sometimes it's the quiet, unassuming moments that leave the deepest impact. It's about seeing people for who they truly are, understanding their struggles, and offering not just a handout, but a true lifeline. Stay tuned to find out exactly how Keanu Reeves made a difference in the life of this homeless mother, and how his simple but extraordinary act of kindness changed her world forever. You won't believe what happened next. To truly understand the gravity of what Keanu Reeves was about to do, it's important to first grasp the struggles this mother was facing. Her name was Sarah, and she hadn't always been in this position. In fact, just a few years ago, she had a life that seemed filled with promise. She had a steady job as a receptionist, a small but cozy apartment in a quiet neighborhood, and a sense of independence that she cherished deeply. Her baby, Emma, had been the light of her life, a blessing she never took for granted. But life, as it often does, threw curveballs Sarah's way. The first blow came when the company she worked for closed down without warning. Sarah, like so many others, was left without a job, and despite her best efforts to find another, the economy wasn't kind to her. Bills piled up, and she quickly realized she couldn't make rent anymore. With no family nearby to offer support and no savings to fall back on, Sarah had no choice but to leave the apartment behind. Her car, which had once been a simple mode of transportation, became her home. For months, Sarah tried to make the best of things. She parked in quiet areas, often in the shade, where no one would notice. She kept to herself, never asking for help, and did everything she could to take care of Emma. But as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, the reality of her situation became impossible to ignore. It wasn't just the constant worry about where they would sleep or how they would eat. It was the isolation, the overwhelming loneliness that came from being invisible, overlooked by society. People would walk past her car without a second glance, and the world around her seemed to keep turning as if she didn't even exist. Sarah's spirit was slowly being crushed. She had dreams, dreams of a better life for her daughter, of stability, and of safety. But with every passing day, those dreams seemed to fade further and further away. Emma's laughter, once a source of joy, now felt like a painful reminder of what she couldn't provide for her child. The guilt gnawed at her constantly. How was she supposed to give her daughter a future when she couldn't even give her a roof over her head? Keanu didn't know any of this when he first noticed Sarah's car that day. He was just another person driving through the neighborhood, lost in his own thoughts, when he caught a glimpse of the mother and child. But there was something about them that felt different, something that sparked an undeniable urge in him to help. Keanu had always been known for his humility, his desire to help others without seeking recognition. But this time, he felt something deeper. This wasn't just a random encounter. This was a moment where he could make a real difference in someone's life, where he could step in and offer not just charity but hope. He pulled over slowly, watching Sarah for a moment before getting out of his car. He wasn't sure what he was going to do or say, but he knew he couldn't just walk away. He approached the car carefully, his footsteps soft on the pavement, not wanting to startle her. When Sarah finally looked up and saw him, there was a flicker of surprise in her eyes, quickly followed by a guarded look. She wasn't used to people stopping. Most people didn't care. Most people didn't even notice her, much less approach her. "Hi, Keanu said gently, his voice calm and reassuring. Is everything okay? Sarah hesitated for a moment. It wasn't that she didn't appreciate kindness. It was just that kindness had been in short supply for so long. She had learned not to trust people's words because those words rarely led to anything tangible. She had gotten used to the indifference, to the lack of real help. But Keena's demeanor was different. There was no judgment in his eyes, no pity in his voice. He wasn't here to lecture her or make her feel small. He was simply asking if she was okay. And for the first time in a long while, Sarah found herself wanting to say yes. But the truth was, she wasn't okay. She hadn't been okay for a long time. I'm fine, she replied softly, her voice barely above a whisper. She didn't want to burden a stranger with her problems. After all, who was she to ask for help? But Keanu wasn't buying it. He could see the exhaustion in her eyes, the weariness in the way she sat, the tension in her posture. It was clear she was fighting a battle that no one could see. You don't have to pretend with me, he said quietly, his gaze soft but insistent. I can see you're struggling. You don't have to go through this alone. The words hit Sarah like a punch to the gut. She had spent so long trying to shield herself from the world, trying to maintain some semblance of dignity, that she had forgotten what it felt like to be truly seen, to be noticed, for someone to care. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she quickly blinked them away, not wanting to break down in front of a stranger. I don't know what to do, she confessed, her voice shaky. I've tried everything, but it's not enough. Keanu stood there for a moment, absorbing her words, taking in the weight of her situation. It wasn't lost on him how fragile her world was, how thin the thread was that held it all together. And for a brief moment, he felt an overwhelming sense of urgency. This wasn't just about offering help, it was about saving her, about giving her a chance to rebuild her life before it slipped away completely. Listen, Keanu said, taking a step closer. You're not alone in this. I'm going to make sure you get the help you need. I won't let you face this by yourself. But Sarah, still skeptical after so many disappointments, couldn't bring herself to believe him. How? She asked quietly. How can you possibly help me? Keanu's response was simple, but it held a promise that would change everything. I'm going to make sure you and Emma are safe. I'll take care of everything. Just trust me. As Sarah looked into his eyes, she saw something she hadn't seen in a long time: genuine hope. It was the kind of hope that wasn't just based on words, but on actions. And for the first time in what felt like forever, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, someone cared enough to make a difference. What happened next, though, was something Sarah never could have predicted. What Keanu did was beyond what she could have hoped for, and it was only the beginning of a story that would leave everyone in disbelief. Keanu's words lingered in the air, and for a moment, Sarah didn't know how to react. Could she trust him? Could she trust anyone at this point? But there was something in his eyes, an unspoken promise, a sincerity that went beyond mere words. It was the kind of promise people only made when they truly believed in something, when they truly cared. Keanu wasn't offering empty sympathy. He was offering action. Without hesitation, Keanu pulled out his phone and made a call. He spoke quietly, but Sarah could hear the urgency in his voice. I need help, he said. Find a place for her and her baby. I don't care what it takes. Just make sure they're taken care of. I'll cover it. As he hung up, he turned to Sarah with a soft smile. You're going to have a safe place for you and Emma. I've made the arrangements. We'll get you there right now. At first, Sarah couldn't believe it. She had been to shelters, to social services, but the waiting lists were long, the promises were empty, and the system had always failed her. Yet here was a man who had come from a completely different world, who barely knew her, yet was willing to give her the one thing she had lost: security. Keanu didn't stop there. As they drove to the new apartment he had arranged for her, he kept talking to Sarah, listening to her story, offering words of encouragement, and even making her laugh, something she hadn't done in months. There was no pretension about him, no sense of superiority. It was as if he understood, as if he had been through struggles of his own, and didn't need to prove anything to anyone. His actions spoke louder than any words ever could. When they arrived at the apartment, Sarah was overwhelmed. It wasn't just the apartment itself, which was spacious and clean, but the sense of stability that came with it. She hadn't had a place to call her own for so long. The walls of that small, quiet unit seemed to breathe life back into her, life that she thought she had lost forever. She could finally rest, knowing that Emma would have a safe space to grow up in. Keanu stayed for a while, making sure Sarah had everything she needed. He didn't rush off, didn't make it feel like a charity case. He sat with her, talking like old friends, offering her a genuine shoulder to lean on. Before he left, he made sure she had food, clothes for Emma, and even a small savings fund to help her get back on her feet. He gave her his contact information and told her to reach out whenever she needed anything, even if it was just to talk. "I'll always have your back," he said, his voice calm but reassuring. As Sarah watched him drive away, something inside her shifted. She was no longer the woman living in a car, isolated and broken. She was someone who had been given a second chance, someone who could rebuild, who could dream again. Keanu had not just given her a roof over her head. He had given her hope. For the first time in a long while, Sarah felt like she had a future. The days that followed were a blur of new beginnings. Sarah found a job working at a local cafe. And with Keanu's encouragement, she started making plans to get back on her feet, to give Emma the kind of life she had always imagined. Keanu's unexpected kindness had sparked a fire in her, and she was determined not to let it burn out. Over time, Sarah stayed in touch with Keanu. They would text every now and then, and he would check in on her, making sure everything was going well. The connection they shared was simple but meaningful. It wasn't about fame, it wasn't about money. It was about something much more important: human connection. Sarah had learned that kindness, when it comes from a place of true care, can change lives. She would never forget how a single act of generosity had changed hers. And for Keanu, his role in Sarah's life was something he never took for granted. He didn't do it for the cameras or the headlines. He did it because it was the right thing to do, because he knew what it felt like to be in need, to be overlooked, and to feel helpless. His quiet acts of kindness were his way of making the world a better place, one small step at a time. As Sarah settled into her new life, she found herself telling others about the man who had changed her life when she least expected it. She would say, "I didn't just get a roof over my head that day. I got my life back." And when she spoke those words, her eyes would glisten with a kind of gratitude that only comes from experiencing a true miracle. The story of Keanu and Sarah became a reminder to all of us that sometimes the most unexpected people can change the course of our lives. It's easy to get caught up in the rush of daily life, to ignore the struggles of those around us. But when we take the time to see each other, when we take the time to truly connect, we can change the world in ways we never imagined. In the end, Sarah's story wasn't just about a Hollywood star helping a homeless mother. It was about the power of compassion, the importance of community, and the lasting impact of one person choosing to make a difference. Keanu Reeves didn't just help Sarah get back on her feet. He showed her that there was still kindness, still hope, in a world that often seems to be losing both. And in doing so, He reminded us all that even the smallest acts of kindness can ripple out and change lives in ways we can't even imagine.